Story of a Murder. The Wives, the Mistress, and Dr. Crippen. Prologue. No murderer should ever be the guardian of their victim's story. And yet, this is the role that Hallie Harvey Crippen has always held. For weeks in 1910, he stood sphinx-like imperturbable under the public gaze. The police and the press marveled at his fixed expression, at how it remained unyielding to questioning and cross-animation. Not even the sudden bursts of photographers' flashes rattled him. He never flinched or buckled under the pressure. He gave one account of events from which he never deviated. So long as he held that narrative close, he also controlled Belle Elmore's story. All the elements of her tale, all the experiences and opinions of the wife he had killed. Although he was recognized as a proven liar, his version of the ordeal, his assertions about her, would be what endured. The events of the North London cellar murder would be remembered as Dr. Crippen's tale, a sensationalized story of a murder. Until relatively recently, murderers' tales would jump directly from the newspapers into cultural legend. Once they were ballads with block printed portraits, then penny dreadfuls and cheap paperbacks stuffed full of chilling exploits. Long ago, murders became celebrity monsters, terrifying aberrations of humanity whose waxwork likeness inspired an uneasy mix of revulsion and reverence among those who visited chambers of horrors. Like most myths, stories of murders and their crimes made for great entertainment. The veracity of these often repeated narratives, whether sung or whispered around campfires, was rarely probed. When a killer is placed at the center of the drama, there is no opportunity to contemplate anything else. They own the story entirely. Their deeds are of prime importance. Everyone else is just a supporting character. This book pulls apart the traditional framework of the North London cellar murder and removes Hallie Harvey Crippen from his unusual role as the story's star. He will be one character among an assembled cast brought together to tell a more panoramic and human version of one of the infamous crimes of the early 20th century. This is the story of a murder, not a murder, and as such there is space for nuance, for moral ambiguity, for understanding the context of the crime, the lives of those it touched, and the setting in which it occurred. Room has been created to consider the perceptions and contributions of a range of individuals who were previously dismissed as peripheral. Since 1910, the wardens of Dr. Crippen's story have been a corps of male narrators. Chief Inspector Walter Drew, Captain Henry Kendall, the barristers Richard Muir, F.E. Smith, Travers Humphreys, Cecil Mercer, and Samuel Ingleby, and the scientists William Wilcox and Bernard Spilsbury, along with a collection of music hall performers and journalists, have each in their own way propped up Crippen's story with their memoirs and biographies. Bound into these volumes are the tales of masterful, clever, and brave men whose shrewd observations, expertise, or decisive action enabled them to help capture a killer and bring him to justice. These men cannot be heroes if Hallie Crippen were not a villain. Standing behind them is another group whose contributions have been allowed to fade away from the passage of time. The North London cellar murder is a story predominantly about women, but told almost exclusively by men. So many of its female players were vocal and active participants in events. Aside from Belle Elmore and the Femme Fatale, Ethel Lee Neve, whose stories are woven into the case, an entire company of women sisters, friends, and colleagues all occupied roles of varying importance in the discovery and prosecution of the crime. Some of them were even involved in changing the law. While Ethel Lee Neve's story was extensively chronicled by the press, only Adeline Harrison, a journalist, was given significant space in the papers to air her views. Unlike her male counterparts, the secretary of the Music Hall Ladies Guild, Melinda May, was the sole woman to have her first-hand account published in a book. It is the woman's version of events, what they saw and did, as documented in newspapers and archival records, that I will be fully restoring to this history. Murders are horrific events, devastating, squalid, and vicious. There is nothing that can mitigate the destructive impact of life deliberately extinguished. However, what such crime does leave in its wake is an opportunity to pause and to examine the human condition. On its most basic level, a murder is a story about people and their emotions, about their vehement desires, their tumultuous anger, their raging jealousy, their corrosive frustrations. It is about what these forces wreak on families, friends, communities, and societies. In some cases, it is about the imprint these events leave on history. It was through these lenses that I came almost by accident to the subject of a murder. As a social historian, my interests lie in the mundane and unspoken aspects of daily human existence. The grubby and unmentionable, the inner dialogues, the fears, the shame, and the expectations harbored by the long dead who, like us, yearned and ached and loved. While the wealthy and educated often recorded their experiences, the majority of men and women who inhabited centuries past were not granted this privilege. Instead, traces of their life journeys can frequently be found in the documentation of crime. As any member of the modern police force or the criminal justice system will attest, a murder creates an enormous amount of paperwork. It was not different in the past. Where the historian is concerned, these forms and statements, the interviews with the witnesses, the inventories of confiscated property, and even the newspaper reports are like gold dust. A crime creates a fixed snapshot of an era at particular moment in a particular space. It also represents an opportunity to take a core sample of that society. The documentation surrounding a crime allows historians to drill into a period and to examine the realities of life that lurk beneath the publicly espoused values and beliefs. How people claim to have lived and how they actually lived rarely ever aligns. Truth is a slippery substance. No account, even one written into historical record, is ever entirely reliable. Everyone will see or experience an event desirably from someone else, which does not suggest one or the other is incorrect, but rather that history offers us an ever-shifting kaleidoscope of possible answers. In the context of a historical crime, the personal motives of those providing the accounts must also be considered. Not everyone is forthcoming with information, and sometimes that which is offered is presented in fragments. Everyone involved in the North London cellar murder harbored their own set of imperatives. Some wanted justice for their friend or family member. Others wished to protect the defendant or themselves from punishment or public censure. The police wanted to demonstrate that they were diligent. Reporters wanted to produce good copy and smoothed and trimmed their interviews accordingly. Occasionally, they colored the dull spots with their imagination. All these participants and their array of accounts contribute to the multi-acted drama you're about to experience. But be warned, this assembled cast is compromised with many unreliable narrators. If at times certain stories seem inconsistent, it is because they are formed of satisfied lies. Layer upon layer of them, you will never be left to navigate these alone, as the context will be made clear. In the course of the saga, perspectives will shift. You will be introduced to one side of the story and then to another. Between these multiple versions, a broader understanding of this episode in history will emerge, even though it is a bereft of the most important first-hand account of all, that of Belle Elmore. One of the most unfortunate aspects of any story of a murder that is the victim can never speak for themselves.